Yeah, life has no meaning without a central sense of our core essence and our purpose. What are we here for? And human design helps us to remember that. All human design really does is take us back to our essential truth. And the only reason we need it is because we've all gotten so far from our truth.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, where you can find a large selection of Om and yoga clothing, spiritual jewelry, and unique fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now here's your host, Ashton Sabo.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Savannah Podcast. We got a really interesting show in store for today. We're going to be talking about human design. Now, I first experienced human design back when I was living in Thailand when I was getting an astrology reading. The man that was doing it for me also happened to bring in this stuff about human design. But it's not something that I really followed up on or continued with. It's kind of been peppered, and I've heard little bits here and there about it over the years. But admittingly, I don't have a huge breadth of understanding. But luckily for me and luckily for us, we have two experts on the show today to help hold my hand and our collective hand in helping us to understand more about this system. Our guests are Chetan Parkyn, who's the author of Human Design, the Book of Lines, and most recently, the Book of Destinies. We're also joined by Carola Eastwood, who's the co-author of the Book of Destinies and his wife and partner. Really excited to have them both on the show. Welcome.
Hi, Ashton. Welcome.
Thank you. We're delighted to be here with you.
We're happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited to find out more about the system. Now, Chetan, you first encountered human design, I guess, in 1993, and I've heard you say that it's similar or takes aspects of astrology, the chakra system, the I Ching, and even Kabbalah. What is, for our listeners that have just never had any experience of or never heard of human design, what is human design?
Well, honestly, the nearest analogy I can think of is like baking a cake. When you bake a cake, you start out with a whole bunch of different ingredients, flour and salt and eggs and sugar or whatever you want to put into it. You mix it all up, and when it's ready, you put it in the oven. And sure enough, it bakes, and when it comes out of the oven, you've got a cake. You don't have the ingredients anymore. So it's true to say there are these four ancient wisdom traditions in human design mixed up as a cake mix, along with an understanding of the human genetic code as well. So we end up with a very, very interesting cake. And it's quite a novel synthesis in its own right. It stands in its own right. It's not astrology, it's not the I Ching, it's not the Kabbalah, it's not the chakra system. It's in its own right.
But it draws from those ancient wisdom traditions. And then it also brings in a couple of modern scientific understandings. Our understanding of the human genetic code, and also neutrino physics.
Neutrino physics, and what? Since that's one of the things that I'm not familiar with at all. What elements of that are coming into it?
Well, without going into too much depth, we can write neutrinos as the messengers of the universe. Every star emits neutrinos. They fly through the universe, and it's been found they move actually faster than the speed of light.
They're little particles, right?
Yeah, they've got a little bit of mass.
Tiny little particles with the tiniest bit of mass.
And they fly through everything.
And they're emitted from the stars.
And each star has its own particular flavor of neutrinos. So all around us, these neutrinos are flying through the universe, flying through our solar system, flying through us, and connecting all the dots up, put it like that.
Well, they're sharing information with them. Well, so it's a universal conversation.
And so for the kind of ground floor starting place of diving further into human design, we have to find out a few basic things about ourselves, right? And that's like the birth time, the place, the date, all that sort of stuff. And that becomes the first blueprint of going down these other paths then, is that correct?
It's like to say, which sunbeam did you fly in on for this lifetime?
Right. So what energy was coming in at that particular moment?
Exactly that, yes.
Now,
so for that, we need the birth information.
Right. And so there are five main types that there's various what you call keys, things like that. We can touch on that in a moment. But what are the five main types within this system? And can you briefly kind of describe the difference between them?
Yes, there's these five types. There are three what we call energy types. And the one we'd all think about first is the manifestor, the person that can manifest and make things happen. Then there's the generator, and then there's the manifesting generator. So these three types make up, about 70% of the world's population. And then there's two non-energy types, projectors, they make up about 20%, and then the reflectors, which have less than 1%. So actually the energy types are more like 80% altogether.
Close to, it's about 79%.
Yeah.
And what do you mean by energy type versus non-energy type?
So energy types, the manifestor, for instance, is somebody who's a catalyst. They literally trigger things to happen in life. About 10 or 11% of the world's population, and all of us have modeled our lives as though we were manifestors. You know, you've had your growing up, you've had your school, you've had your education, now get out and make it happen. And only 11% of the population can actually manage that off the bat. So they find themselves in a bit of a pickle sometimes because they have this gift to manifest, but nobody else does. So there can be this resentment, and there can be all kinds of roadblocks put up in front of them. So manifestors have to be very particular, you know, how they go about things, so that all their energy actually goes into manifesting rather than clearing roadblocks. The generator is somebody that has what we call the sacral center active in their design. And a generator is somebody who is constantly generating life force energy. And so the whole question is, what do I do with this life force energy? And the unfortunate thing is very, very few people actually know to trust their life force energy, that they try and conceptualize, you know, what's the right thing to do or the good approach to things, and end up in a real tangle. So fortunately, human design can tell them exactly, you know, this is how your design works for you. The manifesting generator is somebody that is very keen on the manifesting part, not so much on the generating part generally. So they like to go out and make things happen, but what we say to them, they have to get this sacral response to things first before they get active. And when they do that, then they find they start aligning with things that are presented to them in a way that actually works for them. The projectors, like yourself and myself, we are both projectors, Ashton, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. We're a non-energy type, strictly. It doesn't mean to say we can't run energy to great effect, but we're actually the guides. That's what we do here in this life. We're here to guide people through our very, very specific nature that we have that's written in our design. So, for instance, in your design, you have this channel of community. So you're somebody that's very much to guide the community. You're here to find people who relate well to what it is you're putting out and give guidance.
Mm-hmm. Bring the community together in a way, what you do with your show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the fifth type, the reflector, less than 1%. And these people are pure empaths. They pick up everything. And in olden times, they'd probably end up in a temple somewhere or in a hermitage in a quiet place. These days, they have to put up with the craziness of the 21st century. So, you know, we always tell reflectors, yes, you're an empath, but there's a limit to how much you can absorb, and you must make time for yourselves.
Mm-hmm. No, so I mean, these are 5 categories, and obviously they're not as simplistic as like, okay, well you're that and you're stuck in that, because they have further areas to break it down. How do you break down more specificity with a particular individual?
Well, this has been our work for years, hasn't it?
Right. Well, there's other elements within human design. So there's the 5 types. There are 6 different authorities, which are your own individual and unique decision-making process, how you make decisions that are always going to be the right decision for you every time, at every turn in your life, throughout your life. So already when you add the 5 different types and the 6 different authorities, you can see that you get a lot of possible combinations. And then when you add in the 3rd main key of human design, which is profile, so we've got type, that's the first key. Authority is the second key. Profile, the 3rd key, and there's 12 profiles. And the profile is your own sort of natural way of moving through life. And it's how you relate well. So when you add those characteristics, now you've got a much bigger set of possibilities all mixed up into one person's makeup. But that's just the beginning, because there's so much more even than that. So we really are looking at a picture of a very unique individual once we see the entire design.
Oh, I've heard this referred to as the new science, or I think even you've mentioned as where spirituality meets science. What do you say to skeptics? I mean, the kind of founding, the man who founded this, that story gets a little, I mean, for a very grounded person like us, it involves some visions and things like that of beings. What do you say to skeptics that they'll say, well, what's scientific about this? How do we help them to kind of understand where it's coming from in a more scientifically minded sense?
Well, wouldn't we all agree that there's a tremendous design to this universe, that everything happens, the laws of physics, that everything works well? So why should people get left out of the picture? Why should our lives be random? Everything works according to a pattern, to a plan. So we each come in with a very specific design. Why it works? It's based on this understanding of neutrinos. Neutrinos were a mystery for many, many years. Without getting too complicated about this, physicists went to weigh up the mass of the universe from the Big Bang, and they came up 80% short. And they couldn't explain, where did this 80% go? So they put forward a theory that there were these things called neutrinos, and there's so many of them that they made up the mass that was missing. And so we say these neutrinos, they're flying through the universe, passing through everything, they're connecting everything up together. So neutrinos in 1987, when the system came in, when it was given, when it was downloaded, it based itself on the theory that neutrinos existed. And it wasn't until 1997 until scientists in Canada and Japan at the same time, they had these deep wells filled with deuterium, hard, heavy water. And they were actually able to stop some of these neutrinos on their way through and get them to register themselves. And so that was the moment at which we said, yes, this is it. The neutrinos prove the science of it.
But that's helpful for people who would like to know a little bit more about the scientific underpinnings or background of human design. And there is research that's been done. There's actually been one that we know of, a scientifically validated study, which has validated one of the aspects of human design, which is type. But what I would say to somebody who maybe would be a bit skeptical or who would wonder about it is, well, try it. You learn about your human design, and then have an experience of actually living it. Just step into your design and see what begins to happen in your life, because a whole transformation happens. Actually, what human design does is it helps to bring us back to our truth, to this simple core truth of who we are and how we're here to express ourselves, so that we can bring through the highest vision of ourself possible. Our highest self, our best self, our soul's intention for the lifetime can come through clearly when we're living our design.
Well, and I love that too, because as I would probably put myself in the category of a natural skeptic. I tend to, if I see something, my initial impulse is to be more questioning of it. But this is one of those things where, like, when you do it, it works out, and you're like, I personally can't explain it, nor do I claim to understand it. But when you go through, you're like, wow, this stuff really does connect and make sense, which, I'd fall into that category you just said of just like, hey, just try it out and see. And then you can, there's certain things that don't always understand. Like, I don't know the mechanics behind, turning on my light switch and how electricity works specifically and all that. But I know that if I flip my switch, the light's likely going to turn on. In the same way here, when you start diving in this, you get your charts read, it really does connect. And that's sort of a very powerful thing. How do you feel that learning this information can really empower people in their lives?
Well, we've come to a point in time these days where we're all being called on to make many more decisions about our life than we ever had to before. The rules have changed. All of us would have to recognize, since we got cell phones and internet and things like that, the rules of life have changed. We're in constant connection with each other. So the level of distraction has gone up enormously. And there's just this situation where we're all having to recognize that if we don't live a life according to our own nature, then we get flung around in everybody else's ideas of what life is. So the beautiful thing about human design is it gives you a perfect picture of what you agreed for yourself for this lifetime and how to go about living it in the most fulfilling possible way. So apart from anything else, I see this as essential knowledge in these days, that if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you're about, then you're pretty much adrift.
Yeah, life has no meaning without a central sense of our core essence and our purpose. What are we here for? And human design helps us to remember that all human design really does is take us back to our essential truth. And the only reason we need it is because we've all gotten so far from our truth, given all the influences in society, television, parental influences from school, and we've forgotten that we have inside of us a way to always know our truth and always live our truth. So human design is a way to rather quickly get back to those core essential truths of who we really are, what we're here to be, and how we're here to express who we are, to live our life.
Would you say that it's kind of like a personalized map of kind of more skillfully navigated waters, as it were, or paths where now you kind of know the grooves that you fit in a little bit more appropriately, so you can kind of skip? You had mentioned the manifestors earlier of, okay, well, I do this well, if I'm not a manifestor, then trying to fit myself into these grooves, into this box, it's going to be a lot more challenging. And especially in the West, we have this sort of entrepreneurial, everyone's got to go out there and create everything on their own type of thought process. If that's just not part of your nature, then as you had mentioned, that's just going to struggle. You're going to just struggle through that a lot. Is a map something that you kind of would relate this to?
Yeah, you're actually, not only are you going to struggle, but you're going to feel like a failure. So it is exactly that. It's a map of how you designed your lifetime how your soul designed your lifetime before you even incarnated. So it's like, we wouldn't take a vacation, say take a European vacation or something, without planning it, right? At least planning the essential things like when we're going to fly, and at least maybe where we're going to stay the first night, or what we're going to see, or which countries we're going to visit. So we plan our journey. Can you imagine why would we come have a human lifetime, without some planning of that journey? Well, our human design is the map of that plan. It's how to execute that plan with the greatest ease and the greatest fun, really, and delight.
Now, you have a new book that you both co-authored called The Book of Destinies, and you've written also on the whole system of human design, but here you also help people determine what their life theme is. Can you explain what the life theme is and what that means to people?
Well, going back to my statement, we all choose a particular sunbeam to come in on. It is that there are these 192 different variations of a life theme. So, life would be extraordinarily dull if we were all playing the same song or just dancing to the same music. There are these 192 different variations that we've determined within human design, and we each have one of them for our lifetime. So some of these life themes, they show up more often than others, but they're all unique. And recognizing your life theme, it's almost like if you were going to write a book about your life, this would be the common thread that goes through the whole book from beginning to end. There would always be these particular flavors and scenes that would show up in your life. And that's the purpose of the life themes. We've written about every single one of these 192 different life themes. And when we presented these to our clients, many of our clients they go into a place of complete quiet and calm because they see that their life journey is being recognized, that it just takes them to such a quiet place inside themselves of remembering what their life purpose is all about.
Or they just start crying, actually tears running down their face in recognition of a truth that they've always known somehow but have forgotten. Powerful.
Now, what about the person that would say, well, I create my own destiny. There's no life theme. I can change it anytime that I want. There's no one fixed anything. My first question is what type do you think that person is? And two, what would you say to that person?
Well, first of all, I would say you're absolutely right. You can create your life, and we're actually designed to be able to create our own experiences. what we would say to that person is, so happy that you know that. Here's a map to help you do that with precision, with clarity, with ease, because that's what human design is.
And how does this for you? I mean, I mentioned earlier where the comment that you made about where science meets spirituality. How does this fit in for you with your own personal spiritual beliefs?
Everything in the universe is in tune. And somehow or other, we as humans, or let's just say spirit in human form, we've got these things called brains, and they've been a little overactive.
Just a little.
Just a little, especially in the West.
So, love is the only game in town. Love is the only thing that's happening in this universe. And somehow we've devised some very peculiar ways of expressing it to ourselves and to each other. So when you understand about your human design, you are naturally in attunement with not only your own life, but with everything that's going on around you. You're in tune with the universe. So having that attunement, one could say, being totally in tune with life, you're a completely spiritually enhanced being. Enhanced because with consciousness in a mobile form, with a very capable mobile form, we're able to do just about anything. So there's no limits to spirituality. I just see, spirit has a real trouble in 3D. I think in fifth dimensions and beyond, spirit's very happy. But coming into the form, coming into the flesh, I think we've given ourselves a really interesting challenge here. So when we can attune to that challenge, we can attune to the reality of being in physical form, we can align our spirit with our nature, then we're doing something extraordinarily spiritual.
And what would you say as well? I mean, we're talking here about, our own personal maps. What's the value for people in understanding other people's maps more?
Well, it's huge. I mean, it's even, I suppose everybody really must start with understanding their own human design. But, oh my God, the revelation really happens, the transformation happens in our relationships, our relationships with, our love relationships, or our family relationships, our working relationships. So many of us now entrepreneurs working with a team, maybe a small team of people, but once we know how we all function best, once we understand and totally accept that in each other, it makes for such an ease in the working relationships, and makes for a great ease in the love relationships.
And for you with your children as well, it's amazing understanding what makes all your kids tick.
Oh my God, it was so huge. Because when I first discovered human design, I had some children who were already grown, and then my youngest was just 13 or 14. So I started using it right away and helping him to navigate his life. I started becoming more wise about how I was relating with him. And my youngest, and our relationship just completely transformed. It became so easy, where I had been a daily kind of struggle before. And we've had parents, say this. Sometimes parents have come to us with, I can think of one family in particular who had 3 children, and one of the children was acting out in school so badly that the school was calling in the parents and saying, we need to do something, and calling in this whole committee of experts and all of this to discover what's wrong with the child. And the parents really didn't want to turn to the alternatives that the school was recommending, which involved medication. And so they came to Chetan, and I helped also with understanding the family dynamics. And essentially what happened is that they discovered that the son who was having trouble, because of his unique human design, he needed particular things set up in his life. And they were simple to do, right? I mean, it was a fairly
He just needed his own room.
He needed his own room and his own quiet space, and he needed the other family members to understand about his requirement to have so much alone time and inner space. So anyway, when the parents understood that, and they began relating with their child differently and giving him more of what he uniquely, individually needed, within 2 weeks, all the behavior that the school was complaining about completely stopped. I mean, that's the power of this system.
So for people that want to find out more, obviously there is your website. People can go on there and get a basic chart for free. They can get more extensive charts. Tell us a little bit about your website, all the information. I know you guys do workshops and coaching and all kinds of stuff. Where can people find out more about you and find out more about your new book?
Well, we're happy to have you come visit us at humandesignforusall.com, and for is spelled out. So human design, FOR, us all, humandesignforusall.com.
So the books are all on Amazon, I think on pretty much any Amazon site.
Yes.
Our first book is out in 11 languages now, so it's having a great go round in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's a bestseller in many parts of the world, and it's really transforming people's lives.
Yeah, Russian and French this year.
Yes.
And then the Book of Destinies that we've just published, or has just been published for us with New World Library, that literally just came out in the last few days. So definitely recommend people to get a copy of that. They can either get it from us directly, where they'll get a signed copy, or they can go to Amazon and get a copy there. And just to say, the Kindle version is in color, so definitely recommend it.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And the other thing that's great fun to do if you're just first learning about human design is, yes, there is a free report on our website, but there's also, right now, there's a special to get the comprehensive report, which is about 20 to 25 pages, all about you and your design, explaining exactly how to use it and how to benefit from it. And it's $35 for that full report, but it's actually right now it's just $19.97. So that's another good way to just get introduced to your own design. And then I would say you definitely want to get the Book of Destinies as well, because learning about your life theme can really be life-changing.
And you also have a lot of different people whose charts you've done in that book as well. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Well, in the Book of Destinies, we're giving examples of different celebrities or world leaders, iconic figures down through time who have shared, for instance, the same destiny path that you might share. So that's a lot of fun. On our website, we also have some statements from people who have had human design readings with Chetan. Jack Canfield, who's the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, is one notable person. There's many who have written in and just to share and to allow us to share with others the power of how human design has transformed their life, how learning about their life theme has had such a big impact for them. So that all of that you can find on our website as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I hope our listeners go to your website, get their chart done if they don't have it, and then check out your books as well. You guys also, do you travel a lot for your teachings? I know you guys are Southern California local, but you also travel a lot for workshops. Is that correct?
We travel all over the world, yes.
Yeah.
We have students in all parts of the world, so we love to do that. We love to spread human design and include it with our travels as well, yes.
Great. Well, and that information is also on the website. There'll be a link for that in the show notes for our show today. I hope everyone here has enjoyed our chat with Chetan and Carola, and I hope you all have a wonderfully present moment. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste. Hey everybody, it's Ashton here with an announcement. We're starting a weekly contest giveaway over at Savannah Spirit. If you'd like to enter into the contest to win one of our weekly prizes, go to savannahspirit.com/contest. If you enjoyed listening to the podcast today, we'd really appreciate it if you went over to iTunes, left us a review, leave us some comments, and share this podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Also want to invite you to go check out Savannah East, which is the name of our blog and also the name of a Facebook group where I interact with guests and our audience. We'll post recent episodes up there as well as interesting articles relating to our guests and or the topics on the shows. And again, thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaeast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.